Well, hello everyone. It's wonderful to be able to speak with you again today. It was wonderful to hear Bill's presentation, and I just want to say on the subject of Bill's presentation, I want to echo something he said, and that's that the $10 I spent on Tao initiation was the best bang for my buck I ever got. I completely agree with him. For $10, really even before I spent $10, it changed my life. So just want to echo that. I agree with him, what he said so much. So today, my presentation is entitled Useful and Useless. And of course, that's day 19 of the Tao of Joy Every Day, the Shoe Tree. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. I want to start out by pointing out that in the Tao of Joy, Derek summarizes a story from Shang-Tzu called the Shoe Tree, or about a shoe tree, I should say. But in Derek's most recent book, which is The Tao of Happiness, which is both a book, a physical book, and an audio book, for those of you who didn't know, if you prefer to listen to books rather than read them through your eyes. That's available on Audible, but there's a story in the Tao of Happiness, Life Lessons from Shang-Tzu, called Useful and Useless as well. And Derek tells the story about the shoe tree in depth there. And so I wanted to point that out to everyone. So if you'd like to read the actual story, it's there, it's available. I'm not going to read the story verbatim from the book. However, I am going to retell it just in a short summary because the story really hits all the key points that I want to try to make in this presentation. So, as the story, Useful and Useless, goes in the Tao of Happiness, is told, Shang-Tzu and a friend of his are having a discussion about the Tao, and Shang-Tzu is talking about the Tao, and his friend disagrees with them, and to make his point, he points out to Shang-Tzu, he goes, hey, look at this shoe tree. It's full of crooked branches that are full of knots. There's no way you could cut straight timber from it. It's full of knots, so as anyone who's ever worked with carpentry at all, you know that if you have a piece of wood with a knot in it, it's very hard to put a screw in it. It's much harder than the rest of the wood, and so it's not good. You wouldn't pick a piece of wood with a lot of knots in it if you were going to do carpentry. And what his friend points out is that any builder or carpenter or furniture maker would look at this tree and just shake their head. They wouldn't give a second thought to using it for any useful purpose to them, like making a piece of furniture or building a house or building anything for that reason. And he said the tree is basically useless. And he says that's the same thing with you and these big ideas of yours. It's a lot of big ideas, but in the end, from a practical standpoint, it's useless. And so that's what he tells Shang-Tzu. And Shang-Tzu, of course, realizes the challenge being laid down, and he smiles. And he then proceeds to acknowledge, in a sense, that, yeah, you're right. No one would use the tree for timber. From a standpoint of being able to make something with it. Hang on, sweetie. I'll come talk to you later, okay? I'm busy right now. I'm in the middle of a conference, okay?
Where's the tablet?
Ask your mommy. I think it's in the house. Okay? I'm sorry about that. That was my daughter. So Shang-Tzu points out to him that, yeah, you're right. From a useful standpoint in terms of making something with wood, the tree is completely useless and for that purpose. And he also points out, he goes, when you look at a fox or a wild cat, they're small creatures, but they move around with agility and they're able to catch other small creatures, right up until the point where they fall into a trap and then they're caught in a hunter's net. And then he makes the comparison between wild cats and foxes to that of a bison, which of course is a large creature that probably can't catch a mouse the way a wild cat can. It doesn't have speed of movement or agility. It's a much more slow-moving creature, and yet that creature, in terms of strength, has far more strength than its smaller creatures in the world. It has enormous strength by comparison. And so he makes this point, and he goes, and also too, one of the things about that shoe tree is that because it's useless for the purposes you suggested, no one will ever cut it down. And so it's free to grow and realize its full potential, and it ends up providing tremendous amounts of shade and comfort for people who see its usefulness and who sit under it, and for communities to meet and sit under the tree and have a picnic and to relax and enjoy the passing breezes in the shade and comfort and protection of the tree. And so Shang Tzu tells his friend, the fact that it's useless is actually the thing that actually makes it so useful. And so that's the story in summary. And of course, like with all Tao stories, the meanings, of course, are multi-layered. There's lots of meaning. This story is fraught with meaning, actually, on different levels. So, in thinking of this story and the different levels that it can apply to, the first one I'd like to talk about is spirituality itself. Because this story about the shoe tree, it makes an excellent analogy for the Tao itself, especially compared to, I don't want to say compared to other spiritual practices, but what I should say is especially compared to the way other people tend to practice other spiritual practices or other religions. Because often it's not really the religion that's the problem, it's the way people approach it. And by the way, you could do that with Taoism too. You could misunderstand it, and I think when you do that, you won't be practicing the authentic teachings, and you won't get the results that you could get when you practice correctly. But the shoe tree itself makes an excellent metaphor for the Tao in this sense, because, to someone who looks at things superficially, there's not a lot of comfort in the Tao, is there? Right? I mean, it's not like the Tao is going to forgive all your sins and that you just surrender your life to it and then you'll get some pie in the sky at some point when you die. It really isn't about that at all. In fact, the teachings are practically, no pun intended, but they're for practical living. They're for the here and now. They're for the present moment, for your life moment to moment. That's what the teachings are about. And so for people who approach it with superficial goals or a superficial agenda, and a lot of people do practice religion for superficial reasons. They want to appear pious. They want to appear virtuous. And, let me tell you, it's a lot easier to appear that way than it is to actually be that way. To actually be pious and devout and virtuous, and to kill your ego takes a lot of effort and something it doesn't come without a price. You do have to work at it. Now, I have to say that the teachings of the Tao work so well, and they're so simple, they're broken down to simplicity itself, that once you get into it, it becomes, I think, at least personally, I feel like it becomes easier and easier. Despite the fact that I have a long way to go. But the Tao itself, of course, it's not for these superficial things. There's a deepness to it as simple as it is, it breaks down these deep ideas of how to live your life in very simplistic terms. And that's its great use and its great advantage. And as, Bill pointed out in his talk, it's not like it's really well known here in the United States. I mean, we're a small group. This particular online meeting group, it's small, of course. But despite its size, it is far-reaching. And of course, in a way, there's an advantage to not being a widely known religion, in the sense that if you look at other religions, we see a lot of bad things done in their name. And I don't want to criticize the religions themselves, because I think there's a lot of good in religion, and I want to be fair about that, if practiced correctly. But a lot of it depends on the user. A lot of the difference between useful and useless is in the user, in the eye of the practitioner, or in the hands of the practitioner, maybe is a better way to say it. But the fact that it's not well known means that, and Derek points this out in the book, The Tao of Happiness, that no one's going to use the Tao to start a crusade or to become evangelical and spread, the good news of the Tao all around the world by actively participating in evangelistic practices, the way many religions do. The Tao is not about that. The Tao is about self-transformation. Now, that doesn't mean it can't affect the rest of the world. The truth of the matter is, when you engage in self-transformation, you transform yourself. And in transforming yourself, you will draw others to you. And then, basically, you invite them to transform themselves without saying a word. That's the way the Tao works. With humility, with calmness, and with just living your life according to the teachings. And so, from a spiritual standpoint, the shoe tree is an excellent metaphor for the Tao itself. But then, of course, Derek points out in the book as well that you can also apply the idea of the shoe tree to society itself. And again, it's a metaphor. If you see an empty field in life, well, that might be a good place to plant a tree. Now, I mean that both in the physical sense. If you have a field maybe in your backyard, a tree planted there can have a lot of benefit for the reasons in the story. Shade and comfort, a place to sit under and enjoy the company of your family or your friends. But also, too, metaphorically, the idea of the empty field that you plant a tree in life also has incredible value. And planting trees, rather than physically planting trees, can mean different things. It can be a project that you undertake to help other people. And what you do is up to you, depending on what your talents are and what you like to do and what you can bring to the world, what your individual usefulness is. Because we all have a usefulness to us. Every human being deserves the benefit of the doubt that they have the potential to be incredibly useful. And oftentimes, society is very superficial. We're drawn to, I often joke and say, the beautiful people, right? People who are born with sort of a great deal of physical beauty and a lot of charisma, sometimes athletic skill. Those are things that tend to be very valued in Western society. But I will tell you something interesting that I've noticed about that. And that's that sometimes those people, the beautiful people, as I jokingly refer to them sometimes, the real athletic people, the real physically beautiful people, sometimes their self-esteem can be the lowest of all. Because what I found is sometimes, not always, but sometimes those people, as you get to know them, you realize that there's a question lurking in their mind sometimes, and that is, do I really have anything of substance to offer, or are people drawn to me for superficial reasons? Some people actually do struggle with this. Now, I want to make it clear here. I'm not criticizing anyone who happens to possess physical beauty or athletic skill or any other highly valued part of Western society. There's nothing wrong with that in itself. But just know that the Tao isn't just for those people. The path to happiness and balance, it's not just for those people, it's for everyone. Even those of us who are less attractive, less charismatic, less athletic possibly. Uh, Maybe we're all those things, but my guess is if there are people in this room, like me, who aren't particularly attractive, definitely not athletic anymore. There was a time when I was more athletic, but not anymore. I certainly don't consider myself among the beautiful people of the world, but I realize that I have usefulness as well in the things that I am good at. And those are the things that I enjoy and that I focus on. And my focus is to be useful to the world around me. First with my family, and then of course to the people at work that I see every day, and then of course to the world beyond, which is, for me, it's being able to put these presentations together, not every week, but a lot of weeks, and to be able to share the insights that I've been able to apply to my life that have helped me so much. So the shoe tree, planting trees, planting things, doing things, realizing your own usefulness and fulfilling your destiny with whatever that usefulness is. That's one of the great appeals of the Tao. And of course, the third thing, and I sort of went into this already, but is, human beings itself. It's important to understand that everyone deserves dignity and respect, and that everyone has something to offer the world. And the Tao practice is to not be superficial, to not just take the first look and go, oh, that person is useless to me, but to look deeper, to see what they have to offer, to not criticize those people, to not put them down, to not limit them, but to accept them for who they are and let them reach their full potential. Because that's what we all want to do. We want to reach our full potential. And of course, the story of the shoe tree is all about reaching our usefulness, even when other people see us as useless. Okay, so there's the shoe tree summary there. So I'm going to try to sum up the points that I made today briefly, if I can. So here we go. So point 1, when we use the unconventional thinking that is encouraged in Tao cultivation, we become aware of the usefulness that can naturally arise in what others recognize as useless, or at least they recognize it as useless on the surface. The story of the shoe tree can be used as a perfect metaphor for the Tao itself. Many do not grasp the deep meanings offered in the Tao. They see it as useless and without value. Chuang Tzu, of course, recognized its unpopularity as an advantage. The Tao is about a quiet, calm inner strength. It is not for people that merely wish to show off their spiritual virtues to appear pious and devout. It's not about that superficial stuff. It's deeper. It's about changing your life and making it a life of happiness and balance, a life where you fulfill your destiny. It's deep. It's not shallow. The story also teaches us that all human beings have value, and that therefore we should never accept judgments from others that label us as useless and try to limit us. In addition, we should be aware of the usefulness of all human beings and make it a practice to treat everyone with dignity and respect. We should look beyond the surface and notice what others have to offer, because everyone has something to offer. And we owe it to each other to be there for one another, to foster each other's potentials, so that we can grow together in harmony and peace and balance. So, as always, I would like to end with a book recommendation, The Tao of Joy Every Day, a great book to use daily to help one study and learn the Tao teachings and put them into action. I want to thank all of you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you today. I hope I said something that was of use, and I hope you all have a wonderful Sunday.
Alex, thank you for that wonderful presentation. That's a great picture of the shoe tree. You know, the trunk, the branches are appropriately twisted, and you know, it's just overall very nice. And also, a quick comment about what you said about various religions being misused. That's definitely something that's quite true that we know from history. And in considering that and the lack of popularity of the authentic Tao in the West, my thinking is that even if the Tao were to become massively popular, I would still think that it will probably not get misused as much as religions have historically been misused. And what I mean is because... Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry, Derek. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just wanted to say I agree with you so much. And the reason why is it reminds me of the phrase from the Tao Te Ching about there's nowhere to stick the knife. There's nowhere for the knife to catch. And to me, the Tao is so unintrusive. It's so devoid of dogma and, all the things that you do see in a cult. There's nowhere to distort it, really. When you're looking at the authentic Tao, it's untouchable.
Well, in the thousands of years since the authentic Tao has been around, for humanity, when it does get misused, you basically have, a few people who drink poisonous concoctions trying to pursue immortality. They end up hurting themselves, and that's pretty much it. Whereas on the other end of the spectrum, the misused religion ends up with, as you pointed out, the Crusades, the Inquisition, the burning of innocent women for being quote unquote witches, and it just kind of goes on and on. So, perhaps it is true. I myself would definitely say that I don't believe any blanket statements like, quote unquote, all religions are the same. No, in fact, most everything in the world have differences and sometimes significant differences. So it seems to me, exactly like what you're saying, the Tao seems to be the better path overall. Perhaps I am biased, but that's my opinion. I'm going to stick to it.
Yeah, I certainly share that opinion with you. At the same time, I realize that, and this is the other nice thing about the Tao too that makes it so useful, is that even if someone has a bend towards Islam or Christianity or any other religion, because the Tao is so non-dogmatic, you can still have that worldview and apply the Tao teachings and I think get good results. And so I agree with you. It's not that religions are all the same, but like I said, sometimes the difference between useful and useless is all in the hands of the user.
Indeed.